I'm Alex Nicholas Kuhn, Executive Director of the Massillon Museum, and we are just thrilled to host this program among our 2021 member workshop series. And I'd like to acknowledge, of course, the support that we receive from not only our corporate sponsors, but from Arts and Stark, the Ohio Arts Council, and Visit Canton. We have a wonderful series that continues through December, which Scott will speak about in just a few moments. But I wanted to reassure everyone that tonight is casual. Hodaya has said she is open to questions throughout the presentation and process. So whether through the chat or raising your hand or during Q&A at the end, please feel free to engage, and we'd love to hear from you. As I mentioned, we are recording this, so be cognizant of that. We do ask that everyone mute when not speaking or asking a question, but you're welcome to leave your cameras on, and Hodaya said she welcomes that as well. And before I introduce Hodaya, I'd like to ask Scott to share a bit about membership and to extend his gratitude to those of you who are members who have joined us tonight. So,
yeah, thank you so much for everybody's attendance tonight. I'm super excited about the program. My name is Scott Phillips. I'm the operations officer here at the Massillon Museum. We're currently running our membership campaign, which I believe now is, I think it's our 11th membership campaign we've done in recent history. So this is part of that. It's part of our membership workshop series that we're doing as a perk, an added perk for our membership. Membership is unrestricted operational support. So that allows us to do the high caliber programming that, you've come to expect with events and exhibits, and to be that, cultural hub in our community. Obviously too, then there's perks of, taking advantage of discounts on classes and workshops, discounts in our shop, artist opportunities, Studio M artist opportunities is another great perk. And as well, member only events that we hold. I wanted to specifically bring that up because we have two that are coming up. We have the holiday open house for members, and that's going to be this Saturday, the 4th. And that's from 6 to 8 p.m. So that's like our members party. We're holding it as an open house this year. And also our members children's holiday party. That's Wednesday, December 8th. And that's from 6 to 7. So those are member only events, another added perk to your membership. And we also have a couple more of these workshops that are happening this year. We have a plate photography history and workshop that's going to be presented by Greg Martin and Mandy Ultimus Stahl, our archivist. She's going to go through some history of photography, and Greg Martin does these amazing web plate photographs. He's going to go through the process of that. That's over Zoom, but he's going to be in his studio, so he'll be showing us how that happens. Also very excited about that. That happens Saturday, December 11th at 11 a.m. Like I said, that's over Zoom. And then the other event that we're having for a workshop is the pet photo portraits and ornaments. So what we're going to have is Anna Young. She's going to be taking photos of your pet members. So this is going to be an on-site at the museum event. And my wife, Sandy, is actually going to be doing pet ornaments. So if you've seen before the paw ornaments that you can hang up on the tree, we're going to have an activity like that for when you're waiting, for your photo to be taken. So that's going to be another exciting event that, should be a lot of fun at the museum. And that's going to be Sunday, December 19th. And that's going to be at 2:30 p.m. So we'd love to see you there as well. But as always, thank you so much for your support. We were able to do these really cool, creative things consistently with that unrestricted operational support. So, I can't thank you enough for that.
Thanks, Scott. So without further ado, because I'm so excited to share with you again the talent and skill that you'll witness tonight. And I want to go ahead and introduce Hodaya, but I wanted to start by saying that I've never had the pleasure of meeting her in person. She and I were introduced virtually over Instagram through our mutual friend, Cyrus Azar. And, oops, that's someone else in the room here. And he had long admired her artwork, and subsequently I have admired her artwork and been completely inspired by in awe of and transfixed by what she is capable of, but also the way in which her artwork is continuing to evolve. So I have the pleasure of serving as the host in my capacity as director of the museum, and Scott in his as leading the membership campaign. However, I am also a true fan of her artwork. So it's just an extra bonus for me. But I want to tell you a little bit about Hodaya. She currently resides in New York, and her artwork manifests a materialistic exploration of the space between creator and creation and focuses on female narrative rituals. Her visual language and interests are rooted in her Orthodox upbringing, multicultural background, music, and fashion design training. Her artwork has appeared on the official banners of the New York Garment District. She created a mural for the Tribeca feature film Egg and participated in the Sing for Hope public piano project in 2015. Her artwork has been featured in Architectural Digest, Insider, W Magazine, and even Brides Magazine. Notable exhibitions in which her work has been featured include the Wausau Museum of Contemporary Art, the Society of Illustrators Museum in New York City, and she was a 4-time finalist at the Bombay Sapphire Artisan Series between 2015 in 2018. She currently volunteers as an art mentor and often serves as a guest judge and speaker at FIT, the Fashion Institute of Technology, from which she received her Bachelor of Fine Arts. And I know she also teaches a great deal of programs. She stayed incredibly active during this pandemic, and it gives me incredible pleasure to now introduce to you and give the floor to Hodaya Louis.
Hi everyone, good evening. Thank you so much, Alex, for this warm introduction. Just one correction, I do not have a doctorate from Harvard. I don't know how it got in, that's not me.
I wonder, when I saw that, I
like, wow, that was
research,
something.
but I thought, Marky knows what she's talking about there.
No, there's one line there that is not me, but thank you. Everything else that is me. Yes, I am. I'm Hodaya. The meaning of my name is Thanksgiving, so that was my holiday. It's all about being grateful. My background, as Alex mentioned, is in fashion design. When I was a little girl, I loved beautiful dresses and creating them, and that was the route that started me in my artistic career. After graduating from FIT, I worked in the fashion design industry. I was an accessories designer, and I worked in it for a few years until I realized that it didn't really bring me happiness. I didn't feel fulfilled. And I realized that the part of the fashion design that I was actually drawn to is the art, is a visual representation of a certain vision. And so I started on a journey of drawing and painting and doing sculptures and doing experimental work in video, and then going back to simple drawing with a pencil. And that has been my life for the past 10 years. And it is for me and with other artists that I talk to and that I study from and with, I feel that this field is a never, just like many other fields, is a never-ending journey of learning. Like, I am always a student and I will always be a student. And I think that state of mind of being just open to learning and being, humble about saying, I don't know this, let's try this, to me is something that I kind of learned to accept and embrace happily. So thank you for being here today. And I wanted to share some of my observations about my approach to self-portraits. So I don't need to tell you what self-portraits are. You know what it is. You draw yourself, you paint yourself, you take a vision of yourself and you create it somehow. There's endless ways of representing who you are through your eyes. I wanted to start my talk today by going through some works, which I'm sharing on a screen right now. And I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about it, what it is, what was the technique, what I used, why I used it. So let me just go back to the first piece. So this was I think this was my very first self-portrait. It was about 12 years ago. And I looked at the photograph and I drew it. And the photograph was what I took all my information from. For example, the photograph had that effect of focus on the eyes. So the eyes were very sharp, in sharp focus, and everything else was kind of blurry. So I tried to replicate that focus on the eyes, you know, with a strong reflection. And then, of course, colors. We all love colors, and every artist, you know, you go to Bleak, you go to art store, and you just want to buy every single color there. And here's something that I learned. I learned that using the more color you use, the more challenging it is to reach harmony. So here's a case of me doing self-portrait without knowledge or without experience of color theory and understanding of the art of mixing colors, which is something that I got into heavily in the past 2 years during COVID. I started doing color tests, mixing colors. And I learned so much from it. And I'm looking back at this piece, which is about a decade old, and I see the lack of knowledge of colors, but it doesn't make it still has its own strength because there's something perhaps naive about my work here. When something was dark, it was dark. When something was light, it was light. And I didn't think about cool and warm, which is something I got to be more familiar with later. Same thing here. I would say that my knowledge for color here was more instinctual. I looked at something, for example, I looked at the shadow that the hand casted over my face, which was interesting to me. It was why I wanted to capture this. I wanted to play with shadows. And the shadow wasn't red, but I felt that red would look good in this specific artwork. And this is when I started realizing, you know, you don't need to actually replicate the color that you see. You can replicate the feeling of the color. You can replicate what is important to you. So because to me, the shape of shadow was interesting because it was like a foreign element on my face, I chose a color that is like fire. And this piece, which we saw, is a lot of studies. I drew over the years, I would say hundreds of sketches. Some of them are tiny, some of them large, some of them I threw away, some of them are painted over, just for the idea of getting familiar with your own face or getting familiar with a certain effect. So here, for example, I'm going with observations or visual language mark makings that is cool. Yes. Sorry, I need to charge the iPad. Oh, sorry. Sorry about that, everyone. So here, the technical element of this execution is based on fashion illustration, which is line, a little bit of shadow, perhaps, from my training and from my experience. So I'm taking those illustrative marks and I take them into studying of angles and studying of the shape of the head, and the whole world of anatomy is an endless field of study, which is fascinating to understand the anatomy of the human figure. It is not like drawing flowers. It is not like drawing landscape. There's something about the human figure that is almost, it's spiritual. There's life in it. And it's something that, how do we show that? How do we show that something that, when we draw something that is alive and that is not still life? And that thought of, hey, how do you show that organic flow of water that goes through our body? How do you show that even with just a pencil? That's the question. That's the drive that is in my work. And so I use photography and I stage certain configurations, it's certain lighting, certain times of the day. Here again, I wanted to study that red shadow, those fiery shadows. And so I staged this photograph and then I worked with it. And as I worked on it, or looking back at it, and again, another piece that's you know, in the last decade for me, I'm seeing the development for myself from being less dependent on the photograph. Because when you start with photographs, and it's fascinating, it's an amazing tool to use, obviously, sometimes we rely on photographs a little too much. And I came to a conclusion, I came to a decision that I am not a camera, and I don't need to replicate what I'm seeing in a photograph because it's already done. It's done. Great job, camera. Now I'm doing something else. So what I'm doing is reinterpreting it or studying it, making it perhaps my own, changing it, adjusting it to what I like. And I think that was a big realization for me when I looked at that old painting and said to myself, you know, like, make it your own, change it, do it. It's an artwork. It's no longer a photograph, and it does not need to be a photograph. So this is, we're talking less about the human being here. We're talking more about the techniques. In this specific piece, it's pencil over Yupo paper, which is just a very interesting material that I found. It's essentially plastic, and it has very, very smooth finish. So that was interesting for me. It's like, oh, wow, you can do something that looks very realistic. But do I want to do something that's very realistic? That is a matter of who you are as an artist, if that's your visual language or it is not. In this case, I played with it a little bit of realism in the hair and the light on the hair, but then the skin, I don't need it to look perfect. Let's have some scratches of pencil. Let's leave the marks of the makers on the artwork. And when Alex was introducing me and mentioned that about the space between creator and creation, that's what I mean. I mean that when you look at the creation, you see the creator, you see the marks of the hand, you see the little flaws, you see the little mistakes, you see the little changing of your mind and going back and fixing it and leaving it or deciding that it's okay. And I like that. I like that the person, that the human who created it is there, is there proudly. And I asked a friend of mine, Lily, who is a photographer, I asked her, hey, can I look at your self-portrait photographs? And she sent me this piece, which is beautiful. Her name is Lily, and she has great work that's very inspiring to me. And I said, wow, that is incredible. I also have a piece that I duplicated myself. And that made me think about what is self-portrait. Why do we take something? Why did I choose her and I, not knowing about it? Of course, we didn't do it together. But why do a person choose to all of a sudden create drama, duplicate themselves, create plural, create a community of themselves? What are we? Because we're curious. We're curious to see what will happen if it's going to be more Hodayas in the world. I hope not. I think one is enough. Believe me, so much mess around. And the piece that I wanted to end with this presentation is a whole different direction that my passion about creating or about capturing portraiture, myself especially, have shifted from wanting to know skills, to work on my skills better, from wanting to create something that is realistic or that is oil, that allows me to really play with color theory, for example. From focusing on that, I started thinking about what's beyond. So in a previous art, I had two of me painted in kind of a classical, realistic manner. And then I look at it And at the moment of these months of my life, this year of my life, I'm no longer interested in replicating the likeness of myself. Who cares? No one cares. You know, I don't anymore. I look at myself now and I do a sketch of myself. And I look at a sketch and I say, how can I simplify? How can I make it different? How can I give it a different life? So I took, and that the sketch that you see on the left is a pencil sketch, just a graphite on paper. And then I made a photocopy of it, and I created a bunch of different compositions of breaking up the face in different, like a puzzle, like a big puzzle. And then I chose this one, and I took those pieces and I drew them on watercolor paper, and I cut that paper and I stitched it together and I stuffed it with mesh on the inside, and it became like a sculpture. It became half a sculpture of my own face, based on a pattern, based on a abstracted, simplified pattern of my own face, the way I see it. And we have a whole, it turned from a drawing, from a flat 2D object to a sculpture, something that has presence in a room, something that takes up space. And not only that, the portrayal of the face, as abstract as it is, still shows something. And what it does, it shows the gravity. It shows that the face, it shows the effect of time, where the face is no longer where it is when you're 20. It's no longer where it is when you're 40. When you're 60 and when you're 80, your face will look different, because that's what life is. We age, our skin slowly sags, we become old, and then we're no more here. And so this, to me, this self-portrait, which is called Face Mask, is my latest self-portrait. And this is my a direction that is just full of mysteries to me. Where would that take me? So now I'm going to, let me just share. Okay. All right, now I can see some, let's see. Everyone can see me now?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. So that was my little presentation there. And I wanted to show a few more pieces. And I wonder if anyone at this stage has any thought, comment, question, a concern. All right, I'm gonna continue. I wanted to show you a few more oil portraits and talk about beauty. And beauty, you know, what is beauty? We all, you know, beauty could be endless things. And we look at ourselves and we judge ourselves, or I'll talk from my perspective. I look in the mirror and I look at a self-portrait and I wonder what someone else thinks of me. When they see me, what kind of face do they see? And so in the work that I do, many times I tell myself, don't do that. Don't look at the face and try to paint someone who you want to be, or someone that how you want other people to see you. So here's a painting, an old painting that is not trying to be ideal or to look. I did not try to make myself look anything other than what I saw. And so, you know, you're tired and you age, and that is okay. And the process of painting something like that, and I painted it over and over again. And every day, I had a few months where every day I would do a portrait, and I would just sit by the mirror and just look, decide on a certain angle, try to, you know, spice things up, move it from here to there, and just experiment. And those studies are not only, were not only about my face, it was also about colors, learning to work. For example, there was something that I got into lately, which is a very limited palette. So if I'm looking back at my old work and I see the self-portrait of mine where I was with the necklace and the hair, that painting, I think there's 20 colors in it. and it looks like it looks heavy, it looks crowded with color to me when I look at it in a judging eye. And so now I tell myself, okay, so a lot of colors is not so good, go with less colors. So Zorn palette, for example, is a palette that suggests use of 4 colors: black, red, mustard, and white. And here's something that I did with Zorn palette. And it looks like it has many, many more colors, but it's not. It's just those 4 colors. If you mix mustard with black, you will achieve some form of green in different variations. If you mix mustard with red and a hint of white, you're gonna get this light orange that I have there. And so that was very interesting to me. So not only you can take very few colors and create something that has a full range, but also it allowed me to focus on what I was trying to show on my face, which was the skin, which was the anatomy, the bones under the skin, how they are, what light does to our skin, what light does to hair. And it's just fascinating to me to try things also that are not instinctual. Because I am a person that is very connected to my instincts, and I'm very into, my instinct told me to do this and that. It's also interesting to me to see what happens if I go against my instinct. So for example, here's another portrait, another one where it's just not trying to be glamorous and do anything other than capture what I'm seeing in front of me in a mirror. And the hair just, I decided to wash the hair with this sickly yellow. And that was just interesting to me to just bring such a broad brush strokes of something that has nothing to do with the face, which is a little bit more realistic. And so that's going against my instinct. Is it successful? I don't know. It doesn't need to be successful. It's interesting to me to look at it and see what happened with those colors that I chose for this piece. So now I also wanted to show you something else. Because I showed 2D and I showed this face mask, which is a sculpture, has a sculptural element to it. And here's another way of trying to achieve a portraiture, a self-portrait, or any portrait really. So I took a wire. I just went to the hardware store and I bought this metal wire. And I just started sculpting it based on my face. So I just put it on my face and I just with my finger, just rolled it all the way. And then look, I got a face, and I can do more. I can do a bunch of faces and I can connect them, and they're going to be like a dancing sculpture. I'm very excited about this. Yes. So this is something that I'm really, I got into, and that's it's just so exciting to take the line, really take a line and make a sculpture out of it. It just changes, it changes the dimensions when you think about it. So that's another thing. And I wanted to perhaps jump into some art. I don't know how many of you feel like drawing today, but I'm going to do some drawing, and I'm going to explain the techniques that I use and the rules that help me achieve certain accuracy, perhaps, if you are looking to achieve accuracy in the portrayal, in a portrait of yourself or of someone else. So I'm going to bring this a little bit closer to me. We're a small group. If you have a question, feel free to unmute yourself and just ask. I'll be very happy to hear any question. So when
I just wanted to ask, for the purpose of setting, is this the space in which you normally work, or the setting, or did you set this up just for us? In other words,
I just set this up just for you. That's not how I normally work. No. I work in, I have a drafting table, sometimes on an easel, sometimes on the floor. It really depends on the material. What I'm showing you today is more about the technique of the outcome, the actual sketching, rather than the setup. So I'm not asking you to learn from my setup. That is not the setup. It's really, you need to be comfortable and you need to have good lighting. That's all you need for setup. So when you have, when you look at self-portrait, you know, when you just Google self-portraits painting in a museum, there's this, you know, classical approach of sitting in front of a mirror. And it could be in any angle, it could be a full body, it could be just the face. I tend, because I like to, I enjoy sitting and just drawing on a small type of on a small sketch pad. So I would find myself putting a mirror on the table and looking at myself and sketching in a mirror that I have on the table. Another way is of course a full body mirror, but that all of these as well as photography. Mirror and photography is, we're going with what we see. We see something and we essentially let that information sink into our brain. And then we look at our surface, paper or canvas, and we try to take that information and place it on our surface somehow. And then, so that what happens is you go back and forth. You flick your eyes quickly back and forth. And when you want to do something that's realistic, that is perfect, because you're not allowing your brain to forget the image. You're looking at, for example, this self-portrait. I set up my easel in front of me, and right next to it, I put a mirror. This way I was able to look at the mirror and look at the canvas, look at the mirror, look at the canvas. And that allowed my eyesight to just remain straight. And that kept the information there in a way that's a little bit easier than if you look at the mirror there and paint here, because then your eyes go from there to there and you perhaps lose that memory, or it takes some time to adjust it. However, this is when we try to be realistic. What if you don't? What if your artistic style, you're not into replicating reality, because you have your own voice, you have your own mark making that's unique, that's who you are. Then in that case, I have a direction that I have been into lately, and I wanted to share with you. And I read it actually in a book. The book is called The Spirit of Art, by Robert Henry, who's an artist himself. And what he wrote in a book that was very eye-opening to me was that one of the classes that he was teaching or visited or something like that, the teacher told the students to look at the model. They did life drawing, to look at the model for half an hour. For half an hour, you had to stare at the model and just study. And then you left the room and you went to another room, and there you worked. So, and I was like, wow, that was amazing to me. I was like, wow, I didn't think that is actually an approach that is so interesting, because it forces you to memorize the information that is important to you. And then you put it down on paper in a way which it's fascinating. So that's, so self-portrait, you can look at the mirror, which is the highest level of connection you have to yourself visually, because in a photograph, and that's something very important for people who are artists themselves and use photography. An important realization to me was how a camera documents reality in a way that goes through some form of a process. For example, shadows become flat. shadow in the photograph that I worked with wasn't red. It was flat. It was dark and it was flat. The whites, the lights, the reflections in camera sometimes also appear flat and there's no depth. So what I'm saying is using photography as a reference for self-portraiture should be used carefully, and you should consider the limitations of camera and understand that camera process things. And so if you use the photograph, then the image that you had down on paper has been processed twice already. And we don't want that. We want it to be as close to reality as possible, perhaps. So photography should be worked with carefully. Mirror is the next best thing. And then that's the third approach of looking in the mirror, but then looking away, which to me is very exciting. So I wanted to do something that is a little bit of both, because I feel like it would be easier to combine both things today for my art, for my portrait demo. So I'm going to take a pencil right now, and I'm going to show you how I work a little bit, give you a little glimpse into my the process that I find myself usually. I like to start my day with that. I like to start my day with a sketch. So I use, by the way, does anyone have any question? It's a great time for questions.
I've got a question for you.
Yes, Mike.
Do you ever, let me see if I can articulate this. So you're probably more in tune with how you look compared to most people because you're obviously painting yourself. But do you ever find yourself surprised on the way you look versus the way you think you look in your mind? And the example I'll give is, have you ever seen a photo of yourself and you're sort of taken back going, oh, I didn't realize my hair was so gray, or I didn't realize my face had changed, you know?
Absolutely, absolutely. I don't think we can ever know how we look exactly. When we see ourselves in photos and stuff, it is captured, it is being distorted by a million things. I don't think we'll ever know. I will never know how I look in your eyes, how other people see me. So I feel that, so even creation of works, like I look at my own art and I say, oh my God, I look terrible. But it's how I saw myself at that light, at that day, at that time. Yeah. I think there is endless ways of how we can capture ourselves. Many of them will not be flattering, but that's, I guess, with drawing unflattering, and you know, because you know, beauty is an eye in the beholder. I'm not saying anyone is ugly, pretty. You know, I'm looking at the piece that I did. I'm not saying, wow, what an ugly person. But I'm looking at him saying, this is a strange person that does not look like me, but it did feel like me at that moment. Okay. So it's such a, you know, elusive image to capture who we are, and of course we want ourselves to look great all the time, but that's it. It's not like that, and that's okay.
Okay, thank you for the answer. I appreciate it.
Okay, so I just want to show you a tool that I have that I love. It is a piece of, it's artist chamois. It's just a piece of suede, piece of leather that is very absorbent. And I find it to be an amazing tool to work with graphite and charcoal and pastel, which all dry media, for working on paper. Different textures of paper will give you different texture, different result, different effects, and I'll show you what I mean. So let me take. Is anyone here? Anyone has a notepad in front of you and a sketch pad, a pencil, and you're planning to draw with me, or you just am curious to see, or you just would like me to just draw a portrait and kind of follow along? I'm curious.
It looks like Miles does. I don't know if you can see him. So we have at least one person. He's under
Draw.
note.
Awesome. All right, fantastic. So I am using a piece of charcoal. I'll take 1 second. I'm going to take. All right. I took a pastel. I took a piece of soft pastel, which is essentially like charcoal, and this is something that I like to do. I like to prepare a little pool of material. So I would do something like that. I would just rub it on the paper somewhere so I have some, for like, as if I have a bucket of paint to work with. And then I'm gonna look at this sketch, which is something I did it, and what was important to me, and you know what, I'll bring it closer to you to explain what I mean. What was important or what was interesting to me here is really have rough pencil strokes. Just not blend them and soften them too much. Allow it to be a little gritty, a little rough. So I'll use that just to show you a little demo. I take my piece of chamois, my piece of suede, and I pick up some pigment on it, and then million ways to work. Let's go with one way. I'll go and I'll just darken the eyes. The whole eye area now is dark. I just mark where the eyes are. I'm gonna mark where the nose is, which is around here, and then the lips are here. So many times my beginning of the artwork would be a placement of the main features of the face. You could jump out and mark the edges of the skull of the person, of yourself, but you can just leave it open. You can focus just, if you're working on paper, the difference between illustration and a painting to me is that in illustration, the white or the background or the surface that you're working on, many times would take up a lot of the artwork. And it's okay, like you don't need to cover, you don't need to paint it, or you don't need to finish. It's okay for illustration to have an unfinished look. Of course, with painting as well, but you know what I mean. In illustration, a lightness and an airy and room to breathe is okay. So here, I'm just gonna do the face and I'm gonna ignore everything else. I can just mark it just to kind of help me put it into a context of size. So there's some rules about the face that are very helpful to remember, and you could adjust them to your likeness. One rule is that the distance between the eyes equals to one eye. And you could look at the mirror and measure one of your eyes with a ruler, take that, put the measurement in the middle and just get the sense of that. Of course, we're talking about a very generic rule. Of course, there's wider and smaller distance, but as a good starting point, if you have that decision or that observation, you could just make sure that your placement of the eyes is correct. And I'm going to take something a little different color, and I'm going to mark the eyes now. So when I draw eyes, I think about an almond shape. Think about sort of an almond shape. And I already have a dark layer underneath it, and that dark layer could be just your regular HB pencil that you just smudged to get that. But I will mark the beginning and end, the inner and outer corner of the eyes, and I'll make sure I have an eye distance between them. That's all I needed to make sure. I then mark the lips, and the lips based on this sketch of mine is about here. And I'm gonna mark the center of the lips first. I'm going to bring this closer to me so you can see it a little bit clearer. Okay. All right. Okay, lips. I like to draw the line that parts the lips, the line in the center, and then I would mark the top lip and the lower lip. And I say mark, and I'm very careful with those marks because, and I'm working right now with colorful, very pigmented sticks because because I'm showing something online and I want it to be very visible. But let's say you sit and you work at home with pencil, and it's transparent. The pencil has transparency in it. Take advantage of that transparency. Use the pencil very lightly. Do not press hard. When you press hard, when you sketch, when you hold your pencil and you press it against the surface that you work on, you are engraving the paper, you're scratching the paper, and you're also committing to a line that may be wrong. When I work, I try at least to work very lightly in anticipation of changes, of things that need to be adjusted. The eye needs to be moved a little bit, the eyebrow needs to be a little bit smaller, the lips are a little bit lopsided. There will always be little changes, especially when if you choose to capture a likeness of yourself. Slow, very light is the way to work, building up in graphite, in charcoal, in pastel, in oil, whatever it is. And I think I once looked at, there was a clear acrylic spray that you seal watercolor or pastel artwork with. And I looked at the instructions and it said something like, very thin, the instructions of how to do it. And they said, spray very, very lightly. It's better to have many layers of very, very light application than one layer of very powerful application. And I was like, that's a good advice for everything in life. It's better to just slowly. It also gives more depth when you work slowly. All right, so where am I? Okay, so I was talking about the outer, the lips, the perimeter of the lips. We don't have lines in our face. The lines that I'm seeing here are lines that are caused by different shapes put together. For example, under the eye, well, under the eye is probably the only place where I would use a line. And then everything else, it's just a shape. It's a shape and it's also a value difference. For example, the lips. Here, I'll show you what I haven't even used that yet. So the lips, I just want to show that the skin closer here is darker than the skin here. It's slightly darker. I don't need an outline to show that it's lips. And I think that's something that was a good observation for me to notice, that when I use less lines, when my approach is less linear, it forces me to think more in shapes. So, for example, if I try to get the lip, I'm just going to get just try to capture that shape, and I will kind of sculpt it with an eraser. I would go around and I would reshape it. And so what I get now, I get a line really, but it's not a line. It's the edge of the form, which is more what I see when I look in a mirror. Even now, when I look in a video, I look at myself, and I see the difference between the lip and the cheek that it's part of. And I ask myself, how do I portray it without being too, literal, saying, putting a line there, saying these are lips. I don't want that. I want the approach to be more naturalistic. And then really, to me, what I love is to look at an eraser like white paint and use white paint in my work, in my illustration work, and not only in not painting, in drawing, use white paint in drawing. So I'll take this and I'll kind of give some attention to the anatomy of the face, to the bone structure. So I have the nose, the side of the nose. I have the bottom of the nose. I have the area under the eyes, which for the shape of my own face is something that is an important characteristic of my facial features. When you look at your own face, ask yourself, how is the bulk? How is the shape of my eyes, which is a marble sphere sitting behind those screens, the shades of the eyelids up and down that protect that precious sensitive marble. How do I show that roundness of that ball? How do I show it from the front? I'm looking at myself right now and I want to capture the likeness of myself, and this is one of the things. So the roundness that is hiding underneath here can be portrayed just by a little bit of shading under the eye. So this is an example of me going against the ideal of beauty, because I spent a lot of money in my 20s buying concealer after concealer after concealer to conceal those bags. And now I look at myself, I'm like, I'm okay with that. This is the shape of my face, and I will not try to hide this anymore. So I guess that is a very important take from today, from our lecture today, from this little talk, is to remember that when you sit down and decide to draw yourself, you allow yourself to accept yourself and to be okay with things that may have bothered you in the past, whether age or complexion or the skin, whatever we look at ourselves and whatever we like or don't like, when you sit and you draw it, there's something about it that causes you to make peace with it. And I think that is why I wanted to do this talk today and demo, because I find that self-portraiture is a very healing and very therapeutic way of not only being an artist, but only being a person that likes themselves, which is very important. So going back to my drawing, and you are, I'm assuming, if you are sitting at home and wanting to do your own sketch, sit by a mirror. So I have a mirror here, and I can look at the mirror. It's a plexiglass that has a mirror effect. I can look at the mirror. I can do two things. I can either just put the mirror right next to where I work and just let my eyes flick back and forth from the mirror to the eye work and ask myself, okay, is that shadow correct? Is that placement correct? Is that proportion true? Or I can look at the mirror, put it down, and just work from memory, and you'll get something else. Right now, what I'm doing, I'm looking at an existing artwork and using that as a reference. Okay, going back to my fabric, and I just slowly put a layer over layer, and I think the important word here is searching. I'm searching. Whenever I use that whenever I apply this paint, I'm going to call it paint. When I apply it, I just search for those features that I am familiar with in my own face. The shape of my bones here, the shape of my lips. And those shapes are something that the more I sketch, the more they come more naturally to me to recognize them. But let's say you just started sketching recently, you just got into it, then every application, every brush stroke, and I'm going to call this brush stroke because it's a very painterly way of working. Every brush stroke needs to have a meaning. It needs to be there because it needs to be there, not because you wanted to fill up the space. So I like to tell myself, work thoughtfully, think about what you do. Don't let your brain wander too much, because I do. I mean, of course, I don't think it's possible not to, start dreaming. Let your mind would travel places, and then you'll be like, oh, come back here, come back here. So it's good to do that, but it's also important to remember that when you work thoughtfully, you work more precisely. I say as I'm not working thoughtfully and I'm being distracted by all your faces. All right, so I like to indicate things. I don't like, or I try not to be uber relying on reality. So, for example, the nose, I'm not gonna try to capture every curve and every configuration of this complex shape that is the nose. I'm not. All I'm gonna do is try to give the idea that it's a nose and that it is my nose. So I will look for cues, visual cues that will help me enforcing that truth. And it's also about eliminating things that are less important or that are less crucial to what you're trying to achieve. And it's something that the truthfulness, which is, the essence of what you're trying to draw, is what every artist is after. And when you tell yourself that, when I tell myself what is the essence of what I'm drawing, or what is the essence of that of that shape that I'm trying to capture, it allows me to ignore things that are less crucial and that are less important. And what I'm doing right now is continuing placing things, placing the upper lid, looking at my own face and knowing that I have a certain shape of eyelid, and I will try to get that shape, to get that certain shape of the skin, the way the forehead is a little bit hooded, how the forehead casts a bit of the bone structure of the forehead is a little bit more protruding. Therefore, the eyes area is dark. It's a little bit in a shadow. It's like there's a cave, two caves of the eyes, which is why I started with just darkness, and then over it, I apply the information that I'd like to add, such as the eye, the shape of the eye. Does anyone have a thought or question now that we're at this stage of this little artwork here that I'm doing? And here's something very important. And I'm going to be using an image that I borrowed from the museum's website. Alex, if you want to just tell us who this person is that I chose as a diagram.
Oh, sure. Well, that is Carolyn McCullough Everhard. I bet Susan knew that. I should have quizzed everyone. And she was instrumental in the suffrage movement. So she was a vocal advocate for women's rights, and in particular, the right to vote. And she had a lot of success too on the local level, securing voting rights for women in municipal elections, I believe. So very proud of this massive pioneer.
There's something very powerful and strong about her, and for sure learning about her history. A strong human being with a thoughtful gaze I'm seeing in front of me. And what I wanted to show you is that there's a rule in portraiture that would be very helpful. And the rule is that if you take, I'm sorry, let me grab a different paper.
She's going to talk.
I just want to put this over. So this is the rule. The rule is if you take the forehead and the chin, if you take that, that measurement and you divide it by three parts. 1, 2, 3. I'm sorry, 1 second. Let me do this for 1 second. Okay. The 3 parts from the forehead to the chin would be the eyebrow. This is where her eyebrow is. The base of the nose. This is where the base of the nose is. And then the chin. So we have a third, and a third. The reason why this is so important is whenever I draw, I would use that measurement, that break of face to verify that my proportions are true. If I'm trying to achieve likeness and realistic approach, I can then take that and play with it. I can exaggerate with the forehead and change proportions, of course. But again, it's about knowing the rules, about knowing that, and I kind of ruined their face a little bit, kind of knowing that you could use those measurements to test yourself and check yourself. So we have 3, 3, and a third, and a third. Now, between the base of the nose and the chin, if you divided that part into 2, you could decide where your lips are sitting on that halfway point. Sometimes they're a little bit closer to the nose. Sometimes they're centered. It is different from person to person. Everything that I tell you is different slightly from person to person. However, there are rules that are helpful because there is sort of a generic proportion. For example, the distance between the eyes, the fact that eyes are symmetrical, the fact that our faces are pretty symmetrical, not entirely symmetrical. It cannot, if you ever took a mirror and you try to see what it looks like to be symmetrical, it is terrible. We're not symmetrical. And that little flaws, and flaws, that's not the word. The little, I would say organic, perhaps, organic quality of things that are not machine made, they are not identical. It just, that's what makes our faces so fascinating. It makes makes your work as an artist, or my work makes it just more interesting, because you're not just copy paste half to the other side. Okay, so we had that third understood. We also know, and one way of working, and of course it's your approach to drawing, but when I choose, for example, the size of my mouth, I can take a pencil, excuse me, I take a pencil and I just hold it against the corner of my eye. And I hold it up and I look in the mirror and I ask myself, if I have that straight line here, where would that meet? Would that be in the first third of my eye? If I take the almond-shaped eye and I divide it to 3. Division to 3, by the way, is a very helpful method with everything that you do. I also use that when I try to replicate a certain curve. And I would take that curve and I would break it to 3, and I would just draw one part. Just, it makes it easier. So I would take my eye and I would mentally divide it to 3. And then I would line up the corner of my mouth with the eye and just ask myself, where does it hit the eye? Is it on the 3rd mark? Is it slightly maybe the center of the eye? Now, if you do that to yourself, you're going to see how some lips are narrower, some are wider, and of course, both ways. So using measurements and using a more technical approach is a way, again, to verify placement of the face features that you're portraying in your work. And I will continue with this artwork right here. Wow, it's a little bit after 7. Does anyone, Miles, do you want perhaps to show what you worked on? If you feel like, perhaps for a comment?
Sure thing. There we go. To just show. Oh yeah. I have this so far.
Nice. That's really cool. And I'll tell you why it's cool. I think it's cool because you took the shapes and you created very confident shapes with them. And I like it. I like the geometric finish of each shape. And what makes this artwork interesting is that whatever language you choose, for example, let's call this language the language of geometric shapes, okay? You are thorough with it. You are consistent with it. The whole portrait is made out of those geometric shapes that slowly will develop into the person that the portrait that you're working on. There's consistency. And I feel like many times our artists, our job is to kind of develop mark making. So when you have a mark making as such as yours, and you stick to it and you're consistent with it, it just gives the work strength. So I think that's great. Could you lift it up a little bit higher? A little bit higher. Yes, I think the lips are great. There's something very sculptural about it, as if it's a piece of a head, a head made out of stone, carved out of stone. So there's something very interesting about it. Notice that there's some areas that could perhaps be a little bit lighter in value. For example, that little dent, the Cupid's bow, right on top of the lip. I feel perhaps maybe if you want to keep that language, I would just do the same shape, but smaller, to just show that it's just a little dent in the skin. It's not an actual hole. It's just something I'm to think about. But direction is great. The eyes perhaps need to be a bit bigger. Perhaps. You can slightly enlarge them, but I think it's an amazing beginning. Thank you so much for showing, and keep it up. It will be cool when you complete it, whenever it is. Does anyone else feel like sharing or asking a question? I will continue then with this here. So when you use a regular pencil, Miles, the way you did, and you don't have a bunch of art supplies, and you want to create some interest in your work, you could use a piece of tissue, you could use paper towel, you could use any piece of fabric in order to move around the pigment, the whatever it is. It could be a pigment if you're using pastel, but the charcoal or the graphite, the pencil. If you just move it around, really it's about what you use to move it around, or you could just not use anything and just stay with one regular pencil and just work with it. What I wanted to say about working with pencil is that instead of holding the pencil like that, which I do many times, I'm not saying that I don't do it, I hold the pencil like that many times. Good thing to do is to take the pencil and hold it very lightly. Hold it from its bottom. Hold it so that you're achieving a tool that is that has almost an organic feel to it, and so it would just be more. It has different feel. It has a different. The pressure affects the quality of your line. So I'll work with this for a little bit. Also, what is nice to try to do is to allow yourself to scribble, meaning I would sometimes, as I said earlier, that I'm searching. The word is that the action is searching. I'm searching, and the same search could be done by putting the pencil down and not lifting it up, just kind of looking for the lines. And because I'm working with you guys, I'm standing very close to it, but the correct way to work is to sketch, go back, look at it from far away. How does it look from here? You know, I'm standing, taking 2 steps back, I immediately see that the space between the eyes is too big. So I will change it. And it would be easy for me to change it relatively because I didn't commit to it. I didn't press my pencil or my pastel. I didn't press anything down. The paper is not engraved. The paper is still good. I can just lightly remove that layer and just work again. I'm going to take pencil now, and I'm going to make sure that the distance is more accurate, especially if my goal is to portray myself. And with that pencil, I'm going to start just filling spaces. I'm going to avoid outlines. And when I say that, it's important for me to express that it's an artistic choice. It's a personal choice of how I portray things, especially illustration wise. And I guess it comes from the fact that my background is in fashion illustration. That's how I started with my art. And so I try very hard to stay away from that language when it comes to real life portraits, as opposed to technical illustration of a product, for example. So because of that, I try to avoid outline as much as I can. And I can hold a pencil and I can create values by first of all, as I showed you earlier, just using this. Here's a value, and here's a darker value. I'll work over it again, and I'll work over it again, and I perhaps add some graphite to it. And here's another value. And I don't need that. Let's say I don't have anything. I don't want blended. I want the visual length. I want the marks that I'm making to be more clear in their edges, perhaps. Well, in that case, I will try something else. Here's an example of how you could shade without smudging or blending. You could just lines, just go with lines. Cross hatching. You can hold a pencil. Take the tip of the pencil and hold it that way. And then you could achieve thicker lines, and you can do this cross hatching with thicker lines. And immediately, it could be just one way. And immediately you're achieving values. And I keep saying values, and it's something that I again, it's part of my kind of circle of doing something and then going all the way and then going back to the beginning. Important thing to know is that value is more important than color. If you use black and white artwork, you can have so much information in it. You can have all the information with just black and white. The moment you introduce colors, and I'm talking from a process point of view, from the creator, once the creator chooses to make to add more ingredients to the meal preparation, it pulls you in that direction. And sometimes it works for your benefit. You will achieve, here's this portrait up here. I'm just going to move you for a second. This portrait up here, it was about colors. It was more, the values were less were less priority while I was working. It was more important to me to try to achieve the skin tone and just try to achieve the skin tone in the light and in the dark. And now when I'm working with you on this piece, my focus is not color. I don't have color in mind at all. So it just makes the work about finding those shapes, finding the anatomy of the face, and trying to find ways to express them. So going to the shape of the face, I can create that shape, not with a blended look, but with strong lines, kind of as I did here. But those lines could work with me. For example, if I look at the side of my face and I see the shape of my cheek, I could try to sort of show it, not by outlining it, kind of like what I have here, but by representing it in a way that's perhaps different. Strong lines like that. If I keep those strong lines all around the way Miles did, like just continue with the same visual language all around, you're strengthening it and you're giving it a validation. So I could take the same type of work and continue all around in order to portray what I'm trying to, which is the general the general shape of my face and the proportion between the different parts of my face. Does anyone have a thought or question about what we're doing right now? I'm sure someone has a question. I have a lot of questions. I'm very curious. I'm very curious if anyone here drew someone else and drew themselves and looked at the work of someone else that drew it and the work of themselves and told themselves, wow, I am much more harsher with myself than I am with other people. I'm curious. I feel like I am very harsh. I don't know, I wouldn't say very harsh, but I feel like I have no mercy when it comes to myself, because you know what? I'm not going to be hurt if I draw myself and I look very odd. I'm going to be excited because I did something that is just different. And when I paint someone else though, not that I can't, but I feel like I have a tendency, and that's where the self-portrait is so different than doing someone else. I have a tendency to want to idealize, give their portrayal a beauty, some form of beauty. And that's something that I think is important to ask yourself and to decide if it's the right thing to do. I feel that sometimes portraiture for me is about making a person feel good. Sometimes it could be that you know what, I just had a commission for a family of 5 and all of them looked very radiant and looked like, you know, how we are when we go to an event and we have our makeup done and the lighting is good and we look our best. And that was wonderful. And it was a great memory for them. And I'm at a stage where I look at my face and I look at if I choose to do a portrait of myself. And it's interesting to me to not want to do that, to not be drawn to filter of makeup and good lighting and good pose, and to kind of be a little bit freer, be a little bit more judgmental, I guess is the word, but less preconceived about what is nice and what is beautiful, and see the skin that I live in today and tomorrow and in 10 years, and be okay with its aging and be okay with its looking just different. And I feel like that's an important decision to make artistically whenever you draw someone, to just think about it. How honest will I be? So this is what I'm thinking. Anyone has a thought about this?
I see, Hodaya, there's Shaya. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. If not, please correct me. But she added in the chat I really wanted to draw along, but as it turns out, I'm watching this in the car, but also I feel more pressure to be accurate when I am drawing other people. And I think that's interesting. And actually, when you were talking about that process a moment ago, it struck me that 3 of the individuals joining us tonight have had portraits commissioned by a local artist, Heather Bullock. And I wondered what one of them was a self-portrait and the other 2 were portraits of loved ones or family members. And I just kind of wondered if any of them are willing to share. What you said too, Hodaya, how do you select the portrait? That process is interesting. That process of selecting the photographic image or how you pose yourself when you are commissioning an artist to represent you or a family member. I mean, it's very interesting that concept.
Yeah, and also remember, Chaya, that we have different goals. When someone commissions a portrait, when someone gives you a photograph of themselves, and they say, I want a portrait of that person or myself, and then they come from their point of view is, I want to feel good. I want to look good and feel good. And that is something that you as the artist that creates that portrait for them, it's always in the back of your head. You're like, okay, they want to look their best. And it is just incredible how different we see beauty, we see ourselves, we see other persons. So I don't think there's any set of rules you can follow in order to know how to do that division between idealizing a person and staying true to reality. Because working as an artist, being commissioned an artwork, in a way you're immediately giving them and giving their point of view and their perspective a priority over yours artistically, because you want them to be happy. So it's just very separate fields to draw a person portraiture wise and draw yourself without having to appease yourself. But I feel that doing that practice. So for example, just take an hour, take this person, for example, take this amazing, brave woman who fought for women's rights, and draw her once beautiful, and then draw her once just how you see it. And then look at those 2 pieces and ask yourself, well, maybe the one how I just saw it has more personality. And I think that's something that artistically you can infuse your language, which would kind of would kind of shift the focus on the artistic achievement rather than the having to beautify them. So for example, and I know we're at the end of the session. But for example, if you develop a visual language, if you develop lines and shapes that are unique, that are yours, you then create a person, you draw a person, and even if you make them, flatter them a little bit, still the artwork at the end has more of a presence artistically, rather than you feeling that you were not true to reality by making those people slightly better looking according to some society rules. But yeah, I think just the point is that if you draw yourself, you're able to make yourself not pretty and not try to make yourself feel good and still feel great about it, because you could do amazing artwork with you looking horrendous. and that would leave you with a fantastic feeling. And really, that is the goal of doing a self-portrait. I would close my little speech with that, with this.
Well, thank you so much, Hodaya. It was so awesome to have you here with us tonight. And I think I can speak for all of us that I'm super, super excited, and I kind of just want to go to my art studio right now, actually. So thank you so much for that. I also wanted to thank some of our major corporate sponsors, our major corporate members, because with them, stuff like this wouldn't be possible. We wouldn't be able to do these awesome programs. So MCTV, the Dell Group, Masu Printing, Bonnie's Engravers Gallery and Signed, Cyrus Custom Framing, Farmers National Bank, Sergeant Clean's Car Wash, Aqua Ohio, Tesla Nanocoatings, Massillon West Stark Chamber of Commerce, and Massillon Development Foundation. So those are our major membership supporters, corporate membership supporters. So, like I said, without that support, these things wouldn't be possible. So we always want to thank them. And thank you so much, Hodaya, for being here. This has just been an awesome, awesome evening. I hope we can continue this conversation actually in the future and possibly have you involved for more future, events. I actually didn't know, Alex, you hadn't met in person. So maybe at one point we can actually make that happen.
I would love to.
That would-
Alex, thank you so much. Alex and I spoke a few times about the work and the essence of my work, and just our conversations were very motivating to me. And thank you, all of you, for listening and being a part of it. And please, if you go home and do a sketch and you want to email it to me just to get my feedback, I'd be very happy. So feel free, Scott, you especially.
Oh, thank you. That's very sweet.
Thank you for being so generous with your time. And I have to give you a few. I know we didn't talk about this and you didn't ask me to do this, but I have a few shameless plugs. I have not yet tackled this because it is 1,000 pieces, but I purchased 3 months ago this puzzle of a painting by Hodaya, The Roots We Follow, and it is by Apostrophe Puzzles. I know we have some puzzle fans in the room. So this is just if you want to see 1,000 pieces. So
I didn't finish it either. I have like probably 2/3 of it, and it's insane puzzle, but it's really awesome. And yeah, it's very exciting for me to see my artwork as a puzzle, and they are supporting minorities. So if you want to do something nice and you want to purchase a puzzle, also support me. That would be awesome.
I think it's a beautiful marriage between this activity of assembling puzzles, this business, it's Black-owned, woman-owned business. It's helping to support other minority business owners and artists, then also, and supporting artists at the same time. It's just a beautiful marriage of those concepts, and it's really important. So yeah, the actual puzzle piece is this size. So it's it's like the size of the first third of my finger. So yeah, a daunting task, perhaps, especially if you have little ones at the house or animals, maybe. However, if you have a space where it's not disrupted, I just can't wait to get my hands on this. And then also, Hodaya is so active on social media. So please give her a follow on Instagram and other forms of social media if you've not already. And I want to echo everything Scott said. Thank you all for participating tonight and being so engaged. And we are going to we've recorded this, so we are going to be posting it. So if you'd like to go back and address anything that, you wanted to reabsorb the conversation or revisit it, we will be posting that hopefully by the end of the week on our website and social media channels. So again, thank you so much, Hodaya. I hope you have a wonderful evening. I hope everyone here has a safe and wonderful evening, and look forward to connecting with everyone in the near future.
Thank you so much, everyone. Happy New Year. Happy holidays.